Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I am Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. Twitter may lose intermediary status if it does not comply with all government orders by the 4th of July, that's the coming Monday. As per news reports, a notice was issued on the 27th of June to the company to comply with all past orders issued by the government. Now, sources in the government have also been quoted as saying that multiple notices were issued to the social media giant last month, but they did not comply with all of them. This now happens to be the final notice, and 4th of July is the deadline for compliance. Also, to ensure that social media companies comply with the Indian laws, the government is also working towards bringing an amendment in the IT rules of 2021, under which it is considering setting up appellate committees, which will have the power to overrule decisions taken by the company's grievance cell in line with the law of the country. To understand further about the proposed amendment, also how effective will it be in addressing grievances in a fair and equitable manner, and most importantly, what more needs to be done to ensure social media giants follow the Indian rules. To discuss this and much more on the program, I'm joined by an eminent panel of experts. So let me first introduce them to you. Pleased to welcome with me in the studio Mr. Subimal Bhattacharjee. He's a digital technology expert. Thank you for your time, Mr. Bhattacharjee. And joining us virtually on the program is Mr. Jiten Jain. He's a social media expert, and advocate Khushbu Jain. She's a cyber laws expert. Thank you to both of you for joining us virtually on the program today. Mr. Jiten Jain, let me begin the program today with you. So before we begin talking about the social media platforms in the country today and the laws of the land that apply to them, let's first talk about the current development that concerns Twitter. Multiple occasions in the past when this social media giant has been at loggerheads with the Indian government. Now, this time, a final notice, that's what the government sources are telling us, that final notice has been served for compliance till the 4th of July, and if it does not comply with the previous orders, it is going to lose its intermediary status. What is it that you expect is going to change after the 4th of July if Twitter does not comply with the orders?
No, honestly speaking, nothing. Because you see, in last couple of years, Government of India has issued multiple, directions, lawful orders to Twitter to take down certain content. Sometimes it was inflammatory content, sometimes it was fake propaganda accounts being run by Pakistan's ISI and ISPR to instigate violence on the streets of Delhi. We had on several occasions seen that Twitter refusing to comply with those lawful orders issued by the Government of India under 69A. Now, if you read the IT Act under 69A, if a lawful order is issued by the Government of India to censor or block certain content, any social media platform has to comply with it. There is no recourse unless and until you go in for appeal in a court of law, you come back to the government. But you just can't sit over the order and say that this is not as per law, or I don't think this is against my, as per free speech guidelines I have, or this is against my personal policy of my social media company. So this is what Twitter has been doing. Now, number two, Twitter also think that it has been operating in some sort of island where no Indian law applies. They don't think that sovereign Parliament of India and the laws passed by the Parliament of India or the policies framed by the Government of India are above the private policies of Twitter. They think that Twitter policies they supersede and they are superior to any law of the world. Forget India. And third, if you look at the other provisions of IT Act, we're supposed to appoint 3 officers like compliance officer, nodal officer, and other thing that also Twitter did not apply for long. Now, and Government of India has given them several reminders. They have issued them several final notices. I think this whole understanding or comprehension of law that if you do not comply with this final notice, you will need you will lose all the protections available to you as an intermediary. I think the moment they do not comply, if there is an FIR, that protections under intermediaries automatically withdrawn. It's gone. Government of India does not have to notify under a separate law or an order or a notification. These protections are there as long as you comply. The moment you do not comply, these protections are automatically gone.
Mr. Bhattacharjee, what is it that, despite such stringent rules and even the new IT rules of 2021, social media companies in one of the biggest internet markets today choose to not comply with all of these regulations, with all of the rules that are, the laws of the land? And despite multiple notices, especially when it comes to Twitter, they choose to not comply with any of the orders. Each time the government sends out a warning, but we seem to, see that nothing has changed. And if we, in fact, look at the data, particularly concerning Twitter, between January 2012 to June 2021, over 17,000 requests were sent by the government to this company, and only 12.2% requests were complied with. What gives Twitter the power to actually choose not to comply with the laws of the land?
Well, as you see, Twitter tries to be like a recalcitrant child. It doesn't want to listen to when the notifications are sent by the government. They are legally bound to do so. Last year, particularly when the intermediate guidelines were brought in, after that, there were a series of times, when even the then IT minister came to the media and also mentioned about the frustration that he has as well as the government has when it comes to Twitter. Some few things they complied, but then they're back to the same game. Now, the problem that we have to realize and what Twitter tries to think is that it is going beyond its position as a platform, and it is itself going and taking a call about how it will manage or handle a content. The moment it tries to do that, it is violating the principles under which an intermediary functions. Mm-hmm. Since 2021, when the guidelines have come and social media intermediaries have been defined, as well as significant social media intermediary under which Twitter would also classify. Yet, in spite of all of that, they think that they are somewhere beyond the law. As Jitan mentioned, they think that they're in some island. So, somewhere we have to be seen to be taking action, even if it means taking them off for a certain number of hours or for a few number of days. We have to show them that the law of the land is supreme, the Constitution of India is supreme, the laws and rules are determinant about how things and content happen in India, and not the whims and fancies of some of the individuals at Twitter who try to take a call on a very, very subjective basis. And as now you have seen also, as Twitter is being bought by Mr. Elon Musk, he himself has raised a lot of issues around Twitter, so there are many things to show that it's not the holy company that tries to show, and there are many unholy things happen behind. So I think from our perspective, we have to be very strict with them. We have to show where our strength is. There are more than 2.3 crore users of Twitter in India. That's quite a significant user. It has a lot of impact on how India's, lot of debates happen today. So I think they have to be made to follow the rule.
Okay, Khushbu Jain, coming to you for your perspective. So what we're talking about is that how a lot of these social media companies today have been acting on their own whims and fancies, despite several laws, several rules and regulations prevalent in the country. To check all of this and also several other concerns emanating out of this, the government has now proposed an amendment to the IT rules of 2021. And one important amendment happens to be the setting up of the appellate committee. Help us and our viewers understand how this committee is going to address most of the concerns that we are talking about.
The current proposed amendment talks nothing, but it brings in more accountability and transparency, and you have a right to appeal. So whatever has been enshrined in your IT Act or your rules and regulations which have come up later, if none of those things are complied with, or let's say, we have seen these platforms literally acting on their whims and fancies. There is lack of transparency, there is lack of accountability, there is no audit trail, there is no right to appeal, there is no speaking order, there is no justifiability, there is no reason given by the act of arbitrariness. These platforms have it on just by giving, a reason that this does not fit with our own self-regulations. Now, this is one aspect. The second aspect, we have seen that they have their own internal policies where they block certain accounts, where they heighten certain things, where no reasons are given. So at least now you have a platform where users can go and appeal after Twitter fails to do it. The second aspect that comes is, in case something has been done up, these platforms are also given an opportunity, the principle of accountability and natural justice, that in case government asks, they're coming up with a proper procedure, proper rules and regulations, that it does not go arbitrary on the government hand. Also, you have a right to appeal in these at these platform. The similar thing is there in other countries also. If you look at Australia came up with a law in 2021, which specifically talks about, it's an online safety bill of 2021, which came in existence, I think, July 2021, which gave countries regulator, and they also formed a commissioner, power to crack down on violent threat, revenge porn, and other abusive posts on the internet. And any user who creates these kind of things will be imprisoned for 5 years. But they also created that tech platforms, all these significant social intermediaries, tech platforms that do not remove them within 24 hours will be fined up to $415,000. Now, to the same bill, Twitter's spokesperson has stated, it's there on all the newspaper articles, that Twitter shares the Australian government's strong commitment to online safety, and we make ongoing investigations in this area to keep our users safe. So I think we are coming up with a similar aspect where your new changes which are being proposed by the government. Coming back to why Twitter has been acting like this or why things are happening, I think both my co-panelists have answered this question, that these platforms have their own rules. They have their own, they act on their own. What steps? Now, the question that comes, which everybody has to ask them, that when you can have your own rules, when you can act on your rules, not that you are passive intermediary, not acting at all. You are acting on your own rules. So what stops you from aligning with the law of the land, the laws prevalent in our country, when they are existing in our country, and also having one of the largest user base or commercial benefits from our country? Then what stops you in aligning your thing with the country's law? Absolutely. Now, you are not stopping yourself from doing the same in other countries. I mean, if you look at Germany, they have their law in place, that is Germany's Network Enforcement Act of 2018. You have Russia, which has specific rules and regulations. You comply with it. In non-compliance, there have been fines given to the Twitter, and they have accepted those fines. I think there was 50 million fine for systematic failure to delete illegal content in Germany, and then Twitter has been fined by Germany. Same happened with Russia. Approximately, I think, 295 or $59,000 of fine was being given in failure of Twitter to remove banned content, including calls of unauthorized protest. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you are abiding with rules and regulations across. Now, when you're sitting here, as Jitinji was talking about, that you are not sitting in your own island. If you are, please bring in your own people and run. You're running in my country. You have commercial benefits. So comply with rules and regulations.
Absolutely. I think that's the most important point, that each time we debate and it comes up, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to, find a solution to it, Mr. Jain, is when you can comply with similar laws in other countries, why not in India? And for how long can we allow them to get away with non-compliance?
You see, if you look at the proposed amendments now, which are in draft stage, and I was a part of deliberations recently, which was held by the, the Minister of State for IT and Telecom, Mr. Who is looking after Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar. And, government is now trying to convey three absolutely clear messages. One, no matter what your policies are, no matter whether you're willing to comply or not willing to comply, there is absolutely no room of debate or discussion about compliance with Indian laws, whatever laws are passed by the Parliament of India and whatever policies are formed by the Government of India. Once they are notified, you will have to comply. Now, government here is not trying to arm twist or, create a, additional cost for compliance with these companies. See, it is an effort to defend the collective rights of millions of Indian users. I mean, these companies arbitrarily suspend accounts, they arbitrarily take down, suspend some people, they remove certain posts, like in the case of Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad or in the case of Ms. R.T. Tupu's handles was blocked. So to do away with this arbitrariness, as Pushpati was rightly pointing out, and in a situation where you have no recourse to appeals, and in a situation where your grievance officers are sitting in Ireland, they don't respond to emails, they don't reply to your phone calls. So what government is attempting to do is trying to create an open and safe internet, protect the collective rights of Indian citizens. And in that attempt, they are proposing to set up, government is proposing to set up a cyber affiliate tribunal. So suppose if there is an arbitrary action by the social media platforms and you as a user are, if you appeal to them and your appeal is not taken care of or you're not satisfied, or suppose if there is a government authority which is, or a law enforcement authority who's sending notices to Twitter and Twitter is not complying. All these people, agencies, we as citizens collectively now can approach Cyber Appellate Tribunal, which will be set up by the government, and it will assume the role over and above the grievance officer of these companies. So once the Cyber Appellate Tribunal passes order, these platforms will have to comply without any, arbitration or without any, delay. Now, this is where this whole, business of lobby comes in. What these companies are now trying to project in the world that these laws are curtailing free speech. They will, put on the additional cost of compliance on this company. They will be affecting the innovation ecosystem of startups, which is a sheer propaganda to ensure that somehow they can find a way not to comply with these laws, somehow to find a way that they don't have to follow the law of India. So I think government is now making a resolute effort to ensure that every company which operates in India does comply with Indian laws, and the open and safety of internet for Indian users over these platforms is guaranteed by the government of India.
Okay, Mr. Bhattacharjee, so, open effort by the government, and on which, the government recently sought suggestions also from all stakeholders, particularly on this appellate committee. Do you see this as checking the arbitrariness that both panelists have pointed out of these social media platforms, and also the fact that now these companies are claiming that we have appointed a grievance officer, but the grievance redressal mechanism still remains in a passive mode. So you will have an auto-reply generation method and not an active response, active grievance redressal mechanism. Could that change after this committee comes into force?
Well, the hope remains, but the fact remains that, even after 1 year of the rules being notified, much has really not changed. They were required to appoint 3 officers: compliance officer, nodal officer, grievance officer. In many cases, they tried to combine all 3 into one. So I think, leave aside that aspect, their propensity to listen to the laws and the rules and the working of the government is very, very low. And that's where we need to make it clear to them. Now, even if you see when the government came up with these amendments, these 4 amendments that they are proposing and which is now in the public domain, is primarily to make the rules of 2021 to be far much more optimal in its implementation. You are looking at the social media to ensure that the due diligence part, in terms of the users and everything are complied with, under the sections 3A, 3.1A and 3.1B. Then new provisions have been provided in terms of very specifically saying that the Indian Constitution, the rules and laws have to be complied with by the social media intermediaries as well as the users. The third, you have, a provision where you are saying that whenever a user approaches a platform for a takedown of a particular content, then that has to be dealt with 72 hours. The track record of all these social media companies, they try to drag on and they never try to respond. And all other grievances can be responded in 15 days.
Okay.
And then, of course, the fourth one, as Jitin was also mentioning, the Cyber Appellate Committee. Now, that will go into, how this, games that this social media intermediaries are playing of not trying to do what they need to do. That I think that is one of the most significant developments, I would say, that gives an opportunity to the government. I personally feel that the government has to show its intent and tact very, very clearly and take some action.
So multiple layers of dissolution of grievances of the users, but the fact remains that, and what remains a contentious issue for all of us each time we debate. And let me take that question to Khushbu Jain. You spoke about how there are stringent laws in other countries and where these companies, of course, do comply. When it comes to India, there is this propaganda lobby that Jitin Jain was talking about, and they have largely been successful in, deviating or delaying the procedure which we've been speaking about, or which there is need at the moment. So in terms of the acts, in terms of the laws that are prevalent, is there need to make them more stringent to bring them at par with what are prevalent in other countries, for example, in European countries, in Australia, the examples of which you cited earlier?
No, see, the basic still stays the same, that we do have laws in place today also. The problem comes is implementation and compliance by these platforms. And in the absence of non-compliance, the action taken by us, that's where we have to harp on. Yes, there is always a need for internet is an evolving state, so there's always a need for new amendments to come in place. As I was citing the e-safety, the Australian Act of 2021, that actually protects cyberbullying to an extent that there is a 24 hours, continuous efforts. There's a commissioner appointed who is in line with all the platforms where they have to comply with all the rules and regulations, because when you talk about child pornography, when you talk about cyberbullying, they have a very see, these platforms have an immense number of people, they touch immense number of interactions, so the swift action has to be taken. So now coming back, the basics comes as the gift of safe harbor, which has been given to these platforms, should have come with an obligation. Now, until this platform liability is in place, uniform platform liability is in place, these platforms will continue to enjoy two sides of safe harbor. One, the right, but not the responsibility. I'll repeat that they are actually enjoying two sides of safe harbor, which should not be the same. That is right, but not the responsibility to moderate their own websites as they seem fit. Now, these, if you look at their own guidelines, as I was rightly putting it before also, that they have their written guidelines, and they were running with their own guidelines, talking that, yes, we do have rules and regulations in place, but these written guidelines of the platforms are not simply the whole story. If you look into the past, which made the government to act, not just Indian government, but all the government across the globe are acting towards it. Because if you'll see, there is a real difference between the rules that these companies post on their websites and the decisions they end up making, case by case and in practice. And this has been seen widespread across globe. So I think
Absolutely. And
the images...
Of late, Mr. Bhattacharjee, what's also been seen is this cancel culture that we see, that only, where only those views will be endorsed, which, are endorsed by a select few on the platform, and particularly concerning Twitter. We've spoken largely about Twitter, so I want to touch about the other platforms also. But I think Twitter, because we have a large number of users here in India, this cancel culture, what is the solution to it?
No, I think, the cancel culture also has to be dealt in the same way that, you have to ensure that there is nothing that, they move away from their neutral platform structure to any kind of editing or any kind of norm. This is what we have to do. And mind you, I just wanted to add to what Khushbuji just mentioned, that, we have been one of the first countries to put some stringent laws as far as the intermediary rules were concerned. They were required. Now, how much, to what extent you go, that was a question mark. But we did something reasonably good, and European Union followed us. Just recently, a few months back, they brought it. So the question remains that now, if we are also, or others are also thinking and following us in our steps, that means something we are doing right. So we have to ensure that the platforms actually follow. Facebook with 24 crore users, WhatsApp with almost 40 crore users, your YouTube with some 47 crore users. These are huge numbers from this country. These are some of the largest numbers that these platforms have from this country. So they have to listen, they have to remain as a platform. That is the most important thing. And they are regularly deviating away from their role as a platform. They are trying to become an editor themselves. They lose their immunity there and there. The moment they lose, we have to ensure that they are penalized. There is some action and all. That's where I think we'll be able to bring them to, absolutely a point where they listen to us. Otherwise, they think that they get away with the might of their power or whatever, what you call, big tech. I think we have to show big tech that they are not big. We can really show them, how small they can be.
So implementation is the key. Khushbu Jain, where are we lacking in terms of implementation? We have similar laws. The other countries are following us when it comes to bringing about guidelines for social media regulation. Is it the implementation bit where we are lacking, and the action, or especially when it comes to penalizing these platforms, where we are not strict enough?
Absolutely. It's been 1 year. We are lacking implementation. If you don't implement the laws, it's there is no teeth. You practically, nobody is scared if you don't implement law. Today, let's take it online to an offline space. If you have a law, as 2302 that you cannot commit a murder, and there is a penalty, there is a punishment to that. If that stops happening tomorrow, the police stops acting to it, the court stops reacting to it, the government do not act or sit silent to it, and just keep on giving me warning, will people be scared? No. So I'm saying that if you have laws in place, it took a lot of time for us to put laws in place, a proper law in place to govern an online space, which itself is a critical task. And now that we are moving towards the metaverse space, this is something very basic, that start implementing these laws, especially for these platforms, these tech giants, because you need to have basics. Now take away. Let's take a situation that implement your law, impose penalties. If you're not even imposing penalties, why not take away the safe harbor provision from them? Put them liable for the content which is being posted on their platform equally as the user, because they are aid to the crime which is happening on their platform by not complying with the rules and regulations, and we have law in place. Why not implement? Why are you giving warning? A warning can be given once, twice. You cannot keep on giving warnings. That shows that you don't have power or you don't have will to implement your own law.
All right, so that having been said, I'll have to wind up the discussion. Thank you, Khushbu Jain and Mr. Jiten Jain as well. We lost connection with him earlier. And Mr. Subhamal Bhattacharjee for joining us on the program today, sharing your thoughts, your views with us and our viewers. Thank you very much, viewers, to you as well for your time. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective. We'll see you same time next week with another brand new topic and, of course, a new set of panelists as well. So until then, take care of yourselves and see you again next week.